All right. Well, thanks so much for being here. I really love your new book and I can't wait to hear about it. And just so people know, the way I found you was I noticed you liked a few things on my Instagram but they were like random things and some of them were from far back. So I'm like, what is this person looking at? And I realized it was like the hashtag for cut ups or something. It was cut ups or burrows or something like that. Then of course I started looking at your page because I love people that love cut ups and saw what you were doing. And I think it's really amazing, this kind of cut up third mind tattoo technique. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I just had a book published of them, but I mean, I've been doing it for well over 5 years, I guess, maybe even longer. Because like I was saying, the pandemic added 2 years to everything. So it's hard to even remember. But yeah, I guess I'd had the idea like years before I started doing it. I don't necessarily remember exactly where the idea came from. Like for the publisher, I told him it was while I was writing an MFA thesis. I'm not entirely certain if that's where it came from, but yeah. Anyway, I know I had the idea for years, but actually like arranging the system was something that like, stopped me. It's kind of like anything, the procrastination. Oh, I gotta do this if I want to do that. But yeah, eventually like I worked out a system and then I did it obsessively for years. And then I convinced a publisher to publish a book.
That happened with me with cut ups also, actually. That I got really well, I started out writing about them like from like a psychoanalytic point, and then I started making cut ups, and then I just got obsessed with making cut ups. It was like 5 years of me just like obsessively making cut ups. I just do cut up like poems out of words, and then I'd like record myself reading the poems, and then I would like put that into an iTunes playlist, and I would like shuffle the playlist and listen to my recordings while I was making cut ups, and I got this like whole like cut ups wormhole. And then after like 5 years of that, I came out of it and I was like, I need to like write about this whole thing. And then I ended up writing a book, but it was like a whole process that got me really sucked in. I mean, I'm still sucked in, but like for a period, it was like I was really sucked in.
Yeah. I was wondering when people do like literary cut-ups, like I don't even understand if what Burroughs did specifically, if he like transcribed it exactly how it's cut up. I mean, is that what he did? Is that what you were doing?
I think when he started, they did, but I think that by the end, Burroughs definitely evolved to like make cut-ups, but then like have it generate ideas, and he would totally embellish on what the cut-up said or like rearrange it a bit so that it would like say something a little bit more fluidly and things like that. So he definitely changed it around. But I saw that in your book, in the intro, you said you're kind of a purist sometimes, and I was definitely a purist in this period I'm talking about. And my first book of cut up poetry, it's like I would not change a word. I was like, no, it has to be exactly like that. And even if I pulled out some of the words, I also love that your book starts with the clip from To Make a Dadaist poem. I love that piece. But even if I pulled out the word like upside down and backwards, I would paste it in that way. And when the publisher published the book, they actually like would reverse the text and put it upside down for me so that it would be like exactly how it was. Now I'm not like that as much, but at first I was like really like, no, it has to be how it was made.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I go both ways. It's like, I think when I stick to more of what comes out of the box, like it can be a lot more brain work sometimes. And maybe I'm just lazy. I don't know. But I mean, I in general use it as inspiration though, too. It's like, as like, many musicians like David Bowie in particular would use cut ups like kind of as an idea generation though, more than like maybe making himself use the music.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be so pure, but it can put your ideas together in ways that you wouldn't have otherwise. That's why I love about your tattoos is they have such like a dreamlike quality, like this woman coming out like that's part dragon and things. You can see the old kind of classic tattoos, but they're all like remixed.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes like the cut ups come out of the box perfectly, but other times it's not so easy. But yeah. I mean, because that's what, yeah, like in the beginning, I wasn't actually doing physical cut ups. Like I would just like flip through books like at random and choose pages and say, okay, I combine these two pages. But then like after doing it for a while, I have like a full-on system where I have a box of photocopied like tattoo flashes that have been cut, which is necessary. And then I just like draw randomly out of the box.
It's very cool. I also have a box. I have now I have many boxes. I have like a box of words, and then I have a box of like black and white images, and I have a box of color images. And if I'm working on different projects with like collaborating with different people, then they all have their like own box, like my writing cut with their writing. I don't know. I'm kind of obsessed with cut ups.
Yeah, man. It's like I guess ever since I started doing like, a lot of tattooers, I think in particular, like the problem with like making tattoo flash is having ideas. Like a lot of people just like also like repaint old flashes, like, oh, I'll like repaint this Sailor Jerry, I'll repaint this whatever, which is fine and fun too, but but anyhow, so it's the idea generation that's the problem, like for most people. And like now there's like no problem. like, yeah. I don't know if you feel the same way about like doing cut-ups, but I feel like I'm not like thinking them up. Like, customers or people that don't really understand how I made the flash, will be like, oh, how do you think of these things? I'm just like, well, I don't. I
It
just
just happens.
right. Yeah.
No, totally. And that's the third mind space that you talk about. And like Burroughs said, like, nobody owns these words. The same thing with images. Nobody really owns the images. They're like there, and you like put them together in different ways. Sometimes people feel like things are working through them in a way, or like from a psychological point of view, you could say it's like letting your unconscious do the work, and like putting your conscious mind kind of out of it a little bit. I definitely feel like I get in this sort of like trance state where just like it could be hours and hours go by, and I'm just in it.
Yeah. 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 Like, I mean, yeah, it helps so much with like, the idea generation. But, I guess like I know that I am, it is being filtered through me. So like I have a part, like someone else looks at the exact same two cut-ups. Like I've maybe done a couple splits. I can't remember. It's hard to get another person to ever finish a split, I've learned in my own experience. And it's almost a joke among tattooers, like to do a split sheet of flash where you would each draw on it. And so anyhow, it's hard to ever get anyone else to complete it. But like, yeah, if you give the same picture to two people, like, or the two same pictures, you're going to get something else from each person.
Totally. It's totally filtered through you. How did you get into tattooing in the first place?
Well, I lived in Minneapolis. That's well, it's not where I'm from, but I'm from Minnesota. But like I went to art school, the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And while there, I met one of my classmates, like tattooed. And this was like maybe mid 90s. And when I graduated, he said, come work with me. And I said, okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's led you to Berlin.
Yeah. It was a long road, I guess. After like working in Minneapolis for a while, I decided to go to grad school in Ireland. Not that I was really so interested in grad school, but I thought it was a good way to move.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in Ireland for 3 years, like 2 years on the West Coast, in this little village of like 300 people called Ballyvaughan. And then I was like, oh, I need to move to the city. I moved to Dublin. I didn't like it very much. And then I heard Berlin was cool, so I came here.
Berlin is cool. You
Yeah.
like Berlin?
Yeah, I still like it. I mean, I think I like a lot of expats go through phases sometimes, but currently it's good, especially in the summertime. It's great.
Totally. Sweden is also very nice in the summer.
Probably quite similar for you, where like, I mean, in Berlin, it's like very gray. Maybe it's not so bad in Sweden. I'm not sure, but like, yeah, it's very gray, and like the winter goes on a month or two too long. And then sometimes, people start thinking, what am I doing here?
Fair enough. Yeah, no, where we live now, we've only spent one winter, but it was definitely more white with a lot of snow compared to when we were in Stockholm. Stockholm was very gray also, and like rainy during the whole winter. It was like getting a little depressing, a little drab.
Yeah, I feel like it doesn't get as cold as it used to in Berlin, but yeah, it's still, I don't know, maybe it's not so bad for me because I'm from Minnesota. So it's kind of what I'm used to. but my girlfriend's from Venice and she has a hard time dealing with it.
Yeah,
She says we're going to Bali this next winter.
very nice. I'm going to Bali in December. Somebody invited me and my husband Carl to be part of this like immersive retreat there, and so I can't say no to that.
How long will he go?
I think the retreat's 2 weeks, so we'll probably go a few days before. So I guess like 2.5 weeks.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, and even if it's rainy, I'm from Miami originally, and Miami has like hurricanes and things, and so I'm used to it. As long as it's warm and rainy, it's okay.
yeah.
But I'm sure it will be cool. How did you get into Burroughs and Geisen?
It's like I was thinking about that before this too. Yeah, like I was saying, I don't necessarily remember. Like, I think as any like art student, I was slightly into the beat poets, but I was thinking about that. Like maybe I had first heard the name Jack Kerouac from a Jawbreaker song. Like I can't remember which song like it's name dropped in. I was like, who's this guy? And I was like, oh, the beat writers. Especially when you're like a young male, it's like, oh, these guys are, it's very kind of masculine writing for the most part, or some of it anyhow. Kerouac in particular. But so then I guess I got into that. I remember reading like Naked Lunch, which in my early 20s, which I don't know, I probably didn't even digest very much of it. I don't think I understood that it was like a cut up really though either,
I didn't when I first read it.
I'd seen the movie, which I guess makes slightly more sense than the book in my opinion. But yeah, so then like I guess maybe from art school I became interested in the beat writers, and it might have been while doing the thesis that I'd gotten more interested into other things, because like probably I don't know if it was while I was in my undergrad that I became interested like in occult things. I don't really consider myself an occultist. I'm like an armchair occultist. Like sometimes I'm interested and sometimes I read a lot about it and other times I don't. So, but
That's
that,
okay.
yeah. But that also ties into Burroughs. Like Burroughs, of course, is like kind of very tied into this stuff. And yeah, and I guess I only know Brian Ginson from Burroughs, like because he was actually the person who introduced the cut up to Burroughs. So
yeah, but I think that a lot of people don't know that about Burroughs, that he was like a total magician. I feel like a lot of people don't kind of miss that aspect, that he was like just saying you could like make the future come through and things with his work. And even in the introduction, I pulled out the Third Mind book. Even in the introduction, they say it's like 2 and 4 all third minds at all times everywhere. So it's like they can communicate throughout time, which I think is a very cool idea.
yeah. I've never actually read The Third Mind. I've read like Junkie and The Naked Lunch. And I guess maybe some more Burroughs, but yeah.
That's okay too. The Third Mind book is like they basically took their early cut up experiments that they were doing. It's kind of very technical, where they're like, these are the pieces that we chose to cut up, and then like this is how we did it. Like this time we cut it into 4 pieces and rearranged them, or this time we did it this way, and then they show like the result of like what it said based on how they cut it up. So it's like very much like a manual of like, this is what we did, and then these are the different kind of techniques that we tried, and then it's interspersed with some interviews and things like that. But it's pretty cool that they like documented their early work in that way.
So if I run out of ideas of how to cut up things, I can consult the manual.
Totally. Exactly. I have a friend named Caitlin Foisey that we do this kind of third mind work together. And part of our work, we like went through and like did the different kind of experiments that they did together to see what our results would be. It's really fun, actually. They're so full of stuff that you can like pick up their work and just start anywhere,
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw the book too, that people wanted you to make a book and get these ideas kind of solidified for posterity. How did you feel about that?
Well, I thought it was a good idea, but you've published books too. So, like having the idea to publish a book and getting it published is a long
It's a
game.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic added to the wait time of this, but yeah, it's been like, it feels like forever. It's like I've moved apartments like 3 to 5 times. I've had 2 different relationships. I've just changed my workspace. It's, yeah, it's been so many years, but yeah. So anyhow, I mean, I guess I was happy that I was able to see it through, because I mean, I don't know. I guess they're like, I don't know. It's like there's something about a book, if you're of a certain generation, maybe, where you feel like, oh, look at this, I have a book. While most people look at their phone for everything. But yeah, something about it seems like, like a real accomplishment, I guess. And yeah, I'm very happy. It's I'm not even sure if it's like entirely out in Europe, because the office for the publisher is based in the UK, which like post Brexit, like slows things down once again. And yeah.
Yeah, I saw that on the publisher's website. It's that they go through like a different channel for the EU, ordering in the EU. Yeah, but I know what you mean about having a book. It is nice to have it, and it is nice to have something you can hold in your hands. And I think we're of the same age range. I finished high school in 1995, and it looked like that's kind of around the same time as you. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's when I graduated too. So yeah, and maybe it's not the same to like younger people, but I guess I guess like to me, like having a book is somehow like, I don't know, like, when I was younger, it's like I'd go to the bookstore and you're like, oh, look at this person. They have a book. They must have this like magical life. But I've had like illustrations published like years ago, by like real publishers too. And it didn't actually change my life.
No, exactly. It's an illusion. But the illusion can lead to greater illusions.
I mean, yeah, like when I was a kid, it's like I always feel like, oh, look at look at this author. This person's like, you go to a bookstore and you think this person must, they have like a nice house with like leather armchair and leather bound books, and everything must be set. And yeah, it doesn't always happen that way. Maybe somehow. Yeah, I guess that's not the reason to make a book. I mean, yeah, I guess like for me, like, yeah, I wanted as many people as possible to see it. I think that's like any sort of artistic person's like, I don't know, it's like we all have large egos, I guess. That's why we would choose to do that. Like we think, or at least it's like I think I've made something that's like so fantastic, other people should see it.
Yeah, that's what artists do. Art's usually meant to be shared. Not always, but usually. Sometimes people just make art compulsively and keep it to themselves, but usually artists share, and that's also part of it, and getting feedback and then making more. Do you ever like show the flash like in galleries and things, and make art shows that way?
Not really. I've done a very small show in Berlin, but I don't even think I was making cut-ups at the point when I had done that. And yeah, I'm toying with the idea of like organizing a book launch party, but I haven't fully committed to it yet. So we'll see. But yeah.
Well, it would be fun, and it's great to flip through. Like I said, I feel like it's very dreamlike. Like the images are very dreamlike, and they inspire a lot. Like looking at the images made me think of a lot of different kind of ideas and things, and yeah, they're really nice, really nice.
Yeah, it's actually like a very edited amount of pictures from what I had originally drawn. I probably gave the publisher twice as much, and then I had this task of deciding which ones were the best. So maybe it actually kind of got the shape, it like maybe it thinned out the bad stuff. So like that's probably for the better.
Yeah, or maybe you could show the other ones in a different way.
Yeah.
Where's your studio located?
Well, I just made a move yesterday. So it's a little dramatic at the moment. And so I'm going to work in a private studio with 2 friends of mine in Friedrichshain. And if you're not too familiar with like tattooing, there's generally like two kinds of studios. There's like the typical open street shop where you just walk in and you say you want whatever, you know, your girlfriend's name on you. And maybe they tattoo it on the second, but like appointment only means like closed studios are appointment only. So you have to contact me ahead of time and then I'll meet you and then tattoo your girlfriend's name on you.
Yeah, but it sounds like that way it's usually like people looking specifically for certain tattoo artists that they want to have their work.
Yeah. And it frees me up to like travel and just do the things I want to do without you know, worrying about like, you know, the store owner having whatever, you know, the store owner, like, I mean, I've had several tattoo studio owners say to me, never open a tattoo studio. Well, it seems fantastic. You also have to deal with like a group of tattooers. There's personality clashes and they all kind of have large egos. And,
Group dynamics. It doesn't matter what your profession is, always like that. You get into groups of people and it's just like turns into this mess.
if you own the studio, you have to pay the rent every month, regardless of however the egomaniacs feel. So yeah, I can understand I can understand how difficult it would be to be a studio owner too.
No, it's a lot of stress. One of my best friends, Denise, when I was in New York, she ran a tattoo studio there. She managed it. And yeah, I used to meet her for lunch. And she was always way stressed out, especially having to make sure that they could pay the rent, the like Manhattan prices all the time. I'm sure Berlin's just as bad. You know, it's like, yeah, really rough.
Yeah, I think Berlin's probably a lot cheaper than Manhattan. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why most people stay here and come here, even though like as long as I've lived in Berlin, which has been about 15 years, like everyone's been complaining about the prices going up the entire time. But I've joined this course in in the last couple of years. But still, if you would come from Manhattan or if you come from California, it's so cheap.
Yeah.
You'll be like, oh, it's so cheap, and that's why the prices, you know, keep going up, of course. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cheap, like relaxed city. I once heard that Berlin is where young people move to retire. It may be slowly changing. Like we're starting to have to work a little bit now. Yeah.
I like that kind of lifestyle. Nice.
Yeah.
And you travel to different tattoo shops in different countries?
Yeah, I haven't traveled much in the last couple of years, of course, because of the pandemic. But except for like going to Carl's Corona, like we were talking about before, because my girlfriend will teach yoga there, and then there's a cool studio called Sick Boys, so we've gone there. And then I was recently visiting my parents, like first time after the pandemic, and worked in Minneapolis. You know, so like as a tattooer, I can pretty much travel to most places anyhow, and probably work while I'm there. Yeah, so it can make traveling easy.
Yeah, it's nice, but it's nice to be able to work and travel into different places at the same time. That's why I like working online so much, because I can do it from anywhere. So when we've gone pre-pandemic on different vacations and stuff, I just would work, you know, in the afternoons wherever we were from.
Yeah, I guess I've always liked traveling and working just because, tattooing's like a social job, so it's like you get to meet the people you work with, and then like you meet the customers, and it's like very social, and you can kind of like, I can kind of like get to know, like other people, and maybe go do some fun things with them afterwards, and like offset the cost of having gone wherever I've gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's great. I'm actually coming to Berlin in October because there's a conference called the Culture Conference, I think it's called. And Carl and I are both going to be speaking there. A Culture Berlin.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
You know where that's going to be?
It's in a former distillery in
Reinickendorf.
Reinickendorf, on the border to Mitte.
Okay. I guess I have an idea of where that is.
I can send you the link. It looks like it's going to be fun. I think it's their third time having this conference. They had a couple before the pandemic. and they asked me and my husband to speak at it. So that'll be fun. And then the next weekend right after, we're having our conference in Copenhagen, which is called Visionary Medium Psychoanalysis and the Magic of Cinema. That'll be fun too.
Yeah, cool.
October is always a busy month for the magic people. So everyone associates October with scary things.
That's why the conferences happen in October.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you can also say that the reason like Halloween and all these things, there's like Scorpio season. It's these old pagan holidays, and yeah, it's that time of year for a reason. Things are getting darker, so I guess you could look at it either way. But usually October is very busy for occultists.
Yeah, maybe it's like in the summertime, people just like earn as a cult. Do you think that's possible?
Totally, they just want to have fun. It's exactly. Go to the beach, wear pink.
First got into like occult stuff. It was probably in the winter time, like in Minneapolis. It was actually like reading the comic book The Invisibles, which
Oh, cool.
do you know this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, like it's such a complex, long series with many things if you want to like explore it, like, afterwards. And yeah, I mean, that's where like, lots of things kind of tie together, like Burroughs. And there's a lot of like very well-known, like kind of pop culture figures that will be connected, in whichever way to, to other occult ideas. And yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that's only coming into mainstream culture a bit more now, is like the fact that a lot of artists and well-known writers and things have had like magical practices or occult leanings, like Pete Mondrian and Yeats, and there's just like a ton of people. And it's like their body of work has like been in the canon or whatever, like the mainstream, like official, like this is art speak, but they never talk about the magical practices. They're totally discounted. It's such a shame, because like if you like somebody's writing and this whole aspect of their work, then why would you like discount this other aspect that they were clearly like really into? It was like a big part of their lives. But it's like I'm currently reading this book called Lost Knowledge of the Imagination by Gary Lockman, and he talks about it as excluded knowledge. It's like it's knowledge that's been purposefully excluded from like mainstream culture. And it's just such a shame. But yeah, I think it's making some sort of resurgence, but it has done that before, and then it goes back underground again. So we'll see. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, some people would say like in the last, like, I don't know how many years, but like, they had the movie like 23, which I never saw, but I understand what it's coming from. And I don't really know how much it expressed whatever ideas, but yeah.
But it's out there. Yeah, same thing. I saw that too, but I didn't actually see the movie, but I will have to watch it at some point. Yeah, and just like I said before, like Burroughs, like a lot of people know Burroughs, but they don't understand that he was into magic. And same thing with Geisen. They were all into magic. Even my husband and I were friends with Genesis Peorge, and like when I was in New York and I went to one of Jen's shows, I went with like a friend who was like from art school, and they were like, oh, I didn't know that Genesis was a magician. And I was just like, what do you think like all of this work is about? Like they're all sigils and like collages with blood on them and hair and things, and it's like, what do you think that they were doing? So, like I don't even understand how people are seeing this art, not seeing that it's having to do something to do with magic. It's like I don't even understand what they think it is. It's very strange to me. Or even I just ordered John Giorno's biography or autobiography that came out, and I want to start reading it this week. But like even when I went to order it on Amazon, they're like, John Giorno wasn't famous in his lifetime. It's like but he's like associated with all these people, all the Beads and Burroughs and all this stuff, Warhol. And it's like I don't know. To me, I'm like, who doesn't know who John Giorno is? I don't know. Like, I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know what the mainstream sees. I don't see it.
I would find it strange to even know who Genesis Forge is without like thinking out there's a magical element.
Exactly. That's how I felt. Like I was like, how do you like to me, Jen is a magician before an artist, It's like the art came out of their magical practices. But yeah, then my friend like was an art school person and was like, oh yeah, we learned about this in art school, but not about the magic part of it. Like what was happening? What are they teaching you? I don't understand. You don't know about the Temple of Psychic Youth?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a friend who lives in Palermo. I'm always like meaning to go visit the Temple of Telema while there. I guess it's like nothing to see really, according to him. According to anyone who grew up in Palermo, it's not much
Yeah.
to look at. Like, I go to yoga, and like I actually got into yoga because of Aleister Crowley. Like I'd read that he was like such a yogi. And I was like,
Mhm.
if it's good enough for him, I could probably do it then, because like, of course, yoga will have kind of a negative connotation sometimes to people that like, oh, you're one of those yoga people, blah, 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 but I guess when I learned that Crowley had done it, I was like, I could do it too.
Yeah. Totally. It's not just for housewives. No, I love it as well. And I haven't been to the Temple of Palermo, but my husband has, and yeah, I'm sure even if it's not much to look at, I'm sure that there's a presence. I feel like all of our like vacations or anytime we go anywhere, we always like have to find some sort of like little pilgrimage to make or like magical spots to go to. Because yeah, that's how I organize my life pretty much. Don't know. I can't imagine just going on vacation and just like, yeah, hanging out. I always have to like find some sort of like what artist is around here, what kind of spot can we go to. Like when we went to Portugal, Crowley like did this whole like fake suicide thing at the Boca de Inferno, so we went there and went to Sintra. And there's also in Portugal there's this great like story of this like real true life corpse bride named Vanessa Castro, whose like husband who's like Don Pedro. He like literally she died or she was killed because she was his mistress, and he and his wife's brothers killed her and they buried her, and he literally dug her up, her corpse, and like put her corpse on the throne and like declared her the queen and like made everybody line up and like kiss her hand. I mean, that's amazing. Like somebody actually did that.
And so which part did you visit? Like where it happened or?
Yeah, we went to there's like a big monastery and a church where they're both buried. And there's a monastery there that he built. But yeah, we drove all around. Flew into Lisbon and drove to Porto and just like Evola and like all these different places. We were just driving around and like finding spots like that and like going to them. Yeah, I love that stuff. That's how I organize things.
When I travel, it's like tattoos.
Yeah. See? Ways to organize our lives.
Yeah. It's like pretty much always based around that. Or, oh, let's go here. Oh, where could I tattoo in that location? Oh, let me look. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good to have direction sometimes, right?
totally. And we just went to Bordeaux for a friend's wedding that was rescheduled from before the pandemic also. And we ended up going to Montaigne's castle. That was very cool as well. His castle was like it had all burned down in the 1800s, but the tower that he like actually wrote all of his books in didn't burn down. It was the only part that didn't. So they rebuilt everything else, but the tower was original. And that definitely had a presence. You walked in there and you felt like, kind of tingly, and I don't know, stuff had happened there. People are turned on and it sticks around.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to mention that we didn't get to?
Um, Not that I can think of. Yeah. Currently having a huge shift in my life, just changing my workspaces. So, and I've been anxiously waiting for this book to be fully released for the last couple of years. And it seems like it might be there or it's very close to it finally. So, yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful book and you do beautiful work. And I love the idea about it. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you also. You said you specifically liked to mostly focus on tattoos from like the early like 1930s and 1950s. What do you like about that era? I love that era.
Yeah, I guess to me, I mean, like when I got into tattooing, I probably got into tattooing in like the 90s, which meant that like tribal was still big, which is, like the first wave of tribal, which I guess is looked down upon a lot of times today. But, it was very like, it was very like, it was a big deal. It was like new at the time, but but yeah, I mean, like when people get into their first tattoos, they usually like grow out of it and whatever. Like I've covered up tribal things I have, you know, and like I guess for me, like, being like a white male, like I feel like that sort of like tattooing is like my culture. Like, I have no attachment to Japanese tattoos. Like I can appreciate them and like the work can be amazing. I personally have just like no desire to get them and like, yeah, no attachment to it and no great desire to even make work like that. Partly because it's so difficult. But yeah, so I mean, I'm just very attracted to that sort of thing because of where I come from, I guess. That's the other thing about like the cut-ups of using those images though, is that like a lot of people will say that like these sort of like very simple like images are like, it's like a distillation of an idea. Like you have like, just like a heart shape. And, it's like such a powerful statement because it's so simple. So what happens when you cut that up and like with like a random element? Do you make like a new deep desire? Is something else being expressed if you combine like many of these great desires into like a new arrangement? Yeah. I also threw in like other things I had just to make it more complex. And yeah, I mean, there's some like sculpture books that were used in the cut up boxes. I was using a lot of like the Russian criminal tattoos in some of the earlier cut ups, which are you aware of like the Russian criminal?
Tell me about them.
Like I can't remember when they came out. Like the first one was probably released about the time I went to grad school. So maybe like early 2000s. And like it's pretty much the greatest collection of tattoo flash now. Like I think when they came out, like it's mostly these books, there's some photos, but it's mostly like books. The books are mostly like a guard's like drawings of the prisoner's tattoos. And he states like what they mean and blah blah blah. And so yeah, like it's this very kind of like crude drawn style, but it has like, a beauty to it. And I think I didn't like them when I first saw them. In fact, I'm relatively certain. But like it's actually become like so ingrained in like Western tattooing today that like lots of people just like copy these things, even though you run the risk of like cultural appropriation from hardened criminals in Russia somewhere. But yeah, there's like the very perverse ideas and drawings in a lot of these like tattoo drawings, like lots of things like, marking people who are homosexual, marking them if they're a thief, marking them if they've done this crime. So a lot of like forcibly applied tattoos too. But then like, yeah, just like a lot to like denote their rank in the criminal like world at the time. Now, I would think from what I've read that like, this is kind of like watered, like it's not like true to today. Like, if you read this book and you see that picture, it doesn't mean that someone with that like, has this rank or something. But yeah.
But it did at one time. That's so interesting too, though, because you're working with history in that way as well, and like cutting it up and kind of rewriting things and through making this art. I love stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, so like, there'd be a lot of like kind of Russian stuff mixed in with the more traditional Americana sort of tattoos. But yeah, I eventually didn't use those as much. And yeah, I kind of get like new books every so often. And I say, okay, we'll cut these ones up. I don't cut up the physical books, but I make copies and cut those up. And then like whatever I'm doing changes as I go. But plus, like, I mean, a lot of like the making of the cut ups, like the idea, is when I'm pulling from the box, but like, the actual rest of it is like a whole other project, and like kind of like we're talking about being a purist of like pulling from the box. I can be like such a purist in like how I work too. It's like I kind of like only work with brushes when most people would use like markers to like make the work. And and like I'll just like, I set like limitations on myself too. Like, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna do this set. Like, and I always do like a set, like maybe 3 to 6 pages or something. And and like I decide generally ahead of time, like, oh, it's gonna be like red and black. It's gonna be red, black, yellow. I'm gonna do like, whatever. Like I kind of set some parameters, which I don't know, somehow like I like to create like with like limitations, even though like it's self-imposed. But yeah, for some reason, like I greatly enjoy that.
Yeah, but if that works for you, it's like making like to me, I just keep seeing like you have to show these like in a gallery or something. They sound like little like series, and like you go for this series and can use this color palette, and put this kind of boundary around it, and then work within that.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like I don't know, like I might even be kind of stupid. I'll decide to try something extreme. And I'll be like, oh, and this time we're going to do 10 pages with this like untested like color scheme or like whatever else, whatever other untested thing I decide to do on that set. But I mean, I guess I like, it's kind of like a problem solving thing, which maybe relates it to tattooing some that, it's like tattooing is generally problem solving. Like, you have the customer who, whose job isn't to really think of good ideas, and they bring you an idea, good or bad or mediocre. So then like working with the person to actually try and build like something good. And then, then like even the tattoo process can be like a problem solving thing, that the person's moving, they're not taking well, they have bad skin, who knows like what happens once it begins. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can also imagine people come in with ideas, but they don't understand like how you make tattoos. So maybe their idea isn't like really feasible for like the actual like how to actually lay out a tattoo, and you have to help them like turn it into something that's really workable.
Yeah. And I mean, today with like everyone having a smartphone, someone will have a picture of like a fresh tattoo on a finger, and they're like, I want this. But like thankfully my fingers are tattooed, so like I can show you how it's gonna look. Like it's not gonna be this delicate, pretty thing. Some people don't really understand like how a tattoo ages, which I guess, if you understand it, like I'll tattoo you everywhere. And it's like I'm not a psychologist. It's like I'm a tattooer. So like it's like my job for money. But like, I will turn people away for certain things if I think, they still don't understand what they're doing. Like I don't necessarily want to ruin their lives. Even though one time I heard that, it's not the tattoo on someone's neck that's gonna like inhibit their jobs. It's their thought making process. So there's that too. Who knows?
But I did notice that in your book too, that you said that the way you make tattoos, like these like really clean lines that do tend to age better than maybe some other types of tattooing would.
Yeah, I mean, I generally try to design for like, yeah, longevity. There's a lot of tattooing I see today that, I personally don't think it's gonna look very good in the future. But in reality, like all tattoos are gonna look kind of bad in the future, like no matter what, And that's just like how a tattoo ages. Like, there's a beauty in like an old man with like lots of blobs on him, that were maybe like jailhouse tattoos. Like, there's like a beauty to this aesthetic too, And yeah, it's like, I mean, I don't really agree with the idea of people who say that tattoos are art. They're like, oh, protect your artwork. It's blah, 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 blah. I think, no, it's actually like a tattoo. Like the tattoo is more about the mark, like you've been marked at a certain time of your life, at a certain place, because something was going on psychologically. And that's like what you carry. It's not like, your family history and you're the totality of your life in a 5-inch picture.
No, it's totally something about like, yeah, like marking the body at like a certain time, like you said. I think you might like this book. This is the book that I eventually made after being obsessed with cut-ups. It's called Scansion in Psychoanalysis and Art. Scansion is just another word for like cutting, like it's a psychoanalytic term. It's like when you, well, the person who made it used to like cut a session short. If someone said something like very profound, they'd be like, stop there, instead of like ending the session at like 45 minutes. They'd be like, stop when you say this like thing that like sounds really like it, like you should think about that, like leave the office thinking about that, what you just said, because it was like really like on the mark. But I just talk about how like artists work with this idea and like mark things, these certain kind of profound moments, through other ways, through like artistic works. And like you said, like tattooing can be one of those ways to like mark something, create this kind of cut in time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can definitely be that, but it also like doesn't have to be that.
Mhm.
Can also, well, I mean, like it was like getting a holiday tattoo is generally a fun idea. It's like, I mean, I'm very tattooed, so like I don't like, I'm not very particular. I mean, actually, I hardly get tattooed anymore, but like, it's like, anyhow, it doesn't have to be a super well thought out idea. Yeah. I mean, because like it is the mark, and so, yeah.
Yeah, like you get Lucky 13 tattoo.
Actually, I have my hand tattooed on a Friday the 13th thing I did because I was bored on a holiday. And it's like, well, it's Friday the 13th. I'm sure someone's doing one of those Friday the 13th tattoos. And I just went and did it. And actually, it was like really interesting because like the guy who taught the guy to tattoo me, or to tattoo, that was tattooing me, was one of the first 2 guys that taught me to tattoo.
See?
Which was like, yeah, it was quite interesting and strange. And
Yeah, but I love that. That's totally like a cut up way of moving through the world too. It's like I just did this off the cuff, like, oh, it's this holiday, and I go get one of these tattoos, and then it ended up like turning into something that like, has affected your life.
yeah,
It's cool.
yeah,
I
generally
had, what were you
fun.
gonna say?
It's generally like, yeah, it's fun. Like, I mean, that like to me, like getting tattooed a lot of times is about like who's doing the tattoo and just the general like environment.
Yeah, I somehow have no tattoos, which is very strange. I feel like for people my generation and like the music and kind of scenes that I like. But I used to hang out at this tattoo shop in Miami or in Fort Lauderdale. And my friend Jose was always like trying to like get, they would just give each other tattoos because they were bored or whatever. It's like, let me give you tattoos. So I just ended up like with a bunch of piercings from him from that time. I was like, here, give me a piercing instead. I bring friends and we get piercings, but I never get any tattoos. My husband thinks of himself as the illustrated man. He was in Topi. He was in Tenfold, the Psychic Youth in the 80s, and he started what's called Topi Scan, which is like Topi Scandinavia. So he has like some Topi tattoos from that era. And then whenever he's a writer, so whenever he like writes a new book or gets like an idea for a new book project, he goes and gets like a tattoo of like that project. So it's like illustrated man, kind of Ray Bradbury style. So he has
Yeah.
a lot of tattoos.
So he marks all the special occasions.
Yeah, all of his creative projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to do it. I think a lot of tattooers like would become more about trying to get like coverage, like I think the image like becomes like secondary for, I mean, at least for me, like totally like the last, I just got tattooed the last time a couple months ago. I hadn't been tattooed in probably a couple of years, but like I just feel like, the back of my legs are empty. And a friend was like posting some picture that he wanted to do, and I was like, I'll do it. Why not? That'll fill that space up. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I feel like I have to get one at some point just to see what it's like, but I haven't yet.
Maybe start small and just see if you can live with it.
Yeah, I almost got 2 when I was in high school, and one was I was gonna get a spider on my neck, like crawling up my neck. So I'm glad I didn't do that. especially because the guy who drew it for me was like, a 2-month relationship or something. And then I almost got another tattoo, but then my friend got the one I was gonna get. So now when she got it, I was like, well, I'm not gonna get that, 'cause, yeah, she got it. So she kind of saved me from that decision, because now it's like, yeah, I wouldn't think of it. It was as cool as I did when I was 16. That could be cute.
You don't want to have a matching tattoo with your friend?
That's true. I guess I could have gone that direction, but mine was like, well, she got it, so now I can't do it, which is
Yeah.
why I think she got it too. So
I actually do this thing where like I tattoo a logo of my face on people for only like $20. And yeah, I mean, for one, it's cheap, it's funny. Like, I mean, but lots of people have got it. Most people get it generally because like they know me and they think it's funny. And like, and lots of people have it already, like almost 100. But like, I've also tattooed it on people that just like saw it and liked it and didn't even know what it was, you know. And but yeah, it's like then like I also sometimes joke just people. I'll be like, "This is your chance to be a part of something greater than yourself." Like, there, like I've heard stories from people like, "Oh, I was in Indonesia and like I was on the beach and I saw someone with your face tattooed on them." You know, and like, and so if you're like, you know, you don't have to be part of the club to enjoy that, but like, yeah, it's like, you know, so you can make such like strange connections by having matching tattoos sometimes too, you know.
is that part of the Brian Kelly army?
And that like actually is the Brian Kelly Army. And that
Nice.
name comes from. It was actually something I started doing when I began tattooing. Like, I guess like Shepard Fairey was quite big at the time. I mean, maybe he still is, but I don't hear as much about him. But with his like Obey, like giant campaign, I thought at the time, I was like, if you're gonna do all this work, why wouldn't you like use your own face? And like I'd started doing like a logo of my face and one of Andy Warhol from his US postage stamp, which came out early 2000s, I guess. Anyhow, but no one knew who Andy Warhol was. I worked. So yeah, I just pushed the Brian Kelly Army tattoo more.
Cool. I like it.
Thanks.
Yeah, Carl and I have coined, we call it the 23rd mind. Like everybody who's on the like 23 current who knows what that is, and like, yeah, ends up working with cut ups and magic and stuff. The 23rd mind. So just the third mind.
Yeah.
Even bigger collective.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't meet too many people that are aware of like cut ups, or even, especially not that are like into them. Like some people have been like, why'd you call your book this?
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, who is this person? I have to meet him.
The average tattoo person, it doesn't make much sense for a title for a tattoo flash book. But I guess I hoped it to be more than like just a flash book. And there's like a lot of like tattoo flash books out. So I wanted to like, yeah, do something a little more.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody else is doing that. I mean, not that I know much about the world of tattoos, but I've never heard of that, with people like cutting up and remixing tattoos in that way.
I mean, there is like something similar that even like Don Hardy or Ed Hardy would do, that like, you know, doing like a rose mashup. Like a rose mashup is a thing in tattooing where you just take a rose and you mix it with something. A lot of times maybe like a panther or something. So then you have this kind of, it's kind of like a cut up too, but I mean, it's not specifically a cut up. So this sort of like kind of mixing things isn't totally like foreign to tattooing. But I guess, I mean, I don't know anyone else that like intentionally does cut ups.
It actually cuts them out, photocopies books, cuts them out, puts them in a box, cuts them up, and then remixes them. And after you put them together, like when you put them in a box, then you see like a general kind of idea, and then you like draw it from there, kind of more freehand.
I don't like place the things together, actually. I just like draw the two things out of the box. And because it's a flash page, it may have like multiple images on it. It may not, you know, it could like, unfortunately, I put some like Sailor Jerry girls in there. So sometimes one half of the box is just some women's legs. which I guess is never
That
really
can go with anything.
one of the two draws is like a 0. It's just like, wow, that doesn't really like give me anything. But like because it's the flash pages, and like I said, I'm not actually cutting them together or placing them together. Like, I just work on it. I say, okay, that's the thing I like best off of this image. And then like off the other page, I like this. So what can we do to put them together? And actually, like a while ago, what I actually do is I use like scrap paper. That means like whatever, maybe I've drawn on it, maybe I've just like, who knows, but generally there's like images on the paper. So like I generally photocopy onto like used paper too. So that like
Oh,
creates
cool.
a little more to it. And then like, there's always like text and tattoos, or there is a lot of times. And some of these things might just be like my bank statements that were like printed like tattoo flash onto and cut up. And then I just like go through these words and pick out a word.
I love that. When I was researching for this book, that's kind of like what Francis Bacon would do with his studio. Francis Bacon, the artist, he'd like his studio was like famously this like huge mess where he just like had things thrown everywhere. And he had like art books everywhere and like postcards of paintings and things. And then he would like put paint canvases and like leave them on the floor and like walk on them and like where he'd walk on like the postcards or whatever. And then he'd like pick things up and start like painting, it was like Pope series and things. But like the scratches from him like basically rummaging around drunk in his studio and like knocking things over and messing things up, those kinds of markings that would end up on the postcards that he was working from, or the art books, he would end up like using that to like spawn ideas and like integrating that when he would make the paintings, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Wasn't his studio like recreated kind of as a piece?
Yeah, it's in Dublin.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's in Dublin actually.
Yeah. I don't think I visited it though.
It's definitely worth a visit, but of course it's all like in glass, so you just like look at it. But yeah, it's cool that they kept it.
Yeah.
Well, it was very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, and if you ever come to Sweden, let us know, because Carl always needs new tattoos. And yeah, and like I said, they just opened a little tattoo shop in Vimmerby, but I don't know how many people in Vimmerby are getting tattoos, but we'll find out. See how that girl, how it's a woman who owns it, see how she's doing.
Yeah. Well, when we come, I'm sure I'll be in Carl's Corona again sometime. And like, even though like that's such a small town, like apparently it draws from like a very large area because it's quite busy. So
that's great.
Swedes seem pretty into their tattoos.
Yeah, there's definitely like, even though this is a small town too, it's like 10,000 people, but like I definitely see people that are all tatted up, like with face tattoos and neck tattoos and everything, walking around. So there's people are around.
Yeah, these guys that hang out that studio, Sick Boys, like they're like a little more extremely tattooed than I'm used to being around myself even. Yeah, it's a little strange.
Maybe it's an extra statement in rural Sweden.
It's like a big like kind of car culture, sort of like motorcycle stuff too. And I don't know. I think like a lot of times that like some people who like if you hang around a tattoo studio too long, you start to think this is normal. Like everyone else has their face tattooed. I'm tattooing my face. Yeah. I don't mean anyhow.
No, well, I mean, also like from my age range, I very much remember like all my friends that were heavily tattooed, they always like made sure that it didn't go like past their sleeves, so they could like, if they need to go to court or on a job interview or something, they could wear a suit and like look presentable, but that's doesn't seem to be how it is anymore. I remember growing up with those ideas.
Yeah, I sometimes think maybe I'm just old fashioned too, and I'm not with it anymore. Who knows?
Yeah, because now people seem to be like even like young girls, they get all these like really tiny tattoos all over them, and it's like they won't be heavily tattooed, but the tattoos they have are like on their hand, on their neck. It's like they only get them where you can see them, and they just get these really little tiny like very wispy tattoos. Like my husband's daughter, she's got like a bunch of these like little tiny tattoos, but they're all like make sure you can see them. Whereas it used to be more like where your t-shirt would cover, you know?
I think it depends like where you live too. I'm not sure if this like matters for Sweden, but like when I lived in Ireland, it seemed like people got their hands and neck tattooed first because they wanted to show. Because
Exactly. They
weather's,
want you to make sure you see it.
yeah, the weather's so bad there. It's like you're always wearing long sleeves. So yeah. Anyway,
Totally. Yeah, and that car culture is big here too. I didn't realize when I moved to rural Sweden that there would be like lines of like old school American like cars from the 1950s and 60s always driving around, you know? It's like did not expect that, but I kind of like it. It's kind of fun.
I never got into it myself, but yeah, I appreciate the cars. But
Yeah, it's fun to look at, see them drive by the window. It's also there's not a lot going on in this town, so it's like, oh, excitement. Which I guess is why they do it. Gotta have something to do.